You're good.
Well, once again, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. And if you are joining us virtually, thank you for watching tonight. Tonight is the first of two meetings that we're going to have to present information about an upcoming bond issue. The next meeting will be October 24th, and that will be held at Van Cleve Elementary at 7 p.m. So feel free to join us there too. It will be the same presentation. There may be a few things that more questions we received, but there's another opportunity. And also next Tuesday, from 6 to 8, we're going to have open houses. If you want to come and see what the buildings look like, we're going to have Kyle, Haywood, and Van Cleve open from 6 to 8. The same evening, that's next Tuesday from 6 to 8. Feel free to come and tour the buildings. Principals will be leading tours and answering questions if you are curious what the facilities look like. So let's talk about our upcoming bond issue. Here are a couple of facts about our buildings and about our plan. First of all, the average age of our elementary buildings is just over 81 years old. The national average is 42 years old. And here locally, that average age is much younger, probably closer to somewhere in the mid-20s here locally. Many of our buildings are not ADA compliant. None of our current elementary buildings have modern HVAC systems. Our current buildings do not have secure vestibules, and that's an important point for school safety. So if you're not familiar, a secure vestibule is where there's two sets of doors, and then between those two sets of doors, visitors are forced into an office area. Currently, there's one set of doors. People are buzzed in with a video and intercom system, but once they're in that door, they are in the school. Another fact, the cost of renovation of our buildings is higher than the cost that it would be to build new, and I have a slide later in the presentation that gets into those details. We do currently have a 1.1 mil permanent improvement levy. It's a PI levy, and that levy is collected for the upkeep of school buildings. We collect about $785,000 annually through that PI, but that is simply not enough to address all of our repair needs for our elementary buildings, and that also needs to cover our junior high and high school as well. If the levy does pass in November, we project a savings going forward of approximately $1.1 million annually in operational costs. And for this project, the state share of this project is $45,665,637. And you'll see that again later. Those are just some facts to begin with there. So the scope of our project, in case you were not aware, is to build 3 new elementary buildings. Those are pre-K through 4 buildings, and one on the west, one on the north, and one on the east. Also, we would look to build a middle school, a 5-6 building to the south. It would also include a high school HVAC project, and an HVAC project is not just air conditioning. It is much more comprehensive than that. It is ductwork, it is heat, it is cool air, it is clean air, it is energy efficient lighting, it's an asbestos abatement. So it's a pretty large project, and that would cover the entire high school. Also, as part of this plan, we would abate and demolish Concord, Cookson, Haywood, Hook, Kyle, and Van Cleve. We would keep the Forest Elementary building standing for use for alternative programs. So that's the scope of the project, and I'm going to get into some more details here with these next few slides. There will also be a question and answer part at the end, but if you have questions about particular slides as I go through them, please just raise your hand. We'd like to be informal. So the map that you're looking at now is a map of our school district. That is the white dotted line. And then the red dots are where all of our school buildings are located. So right now we operate 9 different school buildings, and that's where they are. So again, our plan would be to abate and demolish and stop using those schools, leaving just our 7, 8, and our high school building, and to replace those with those 4 schools. So again, we have our West Elementary, our North Elementary, East Elementary, and a South Middle School. And let me show you those slides again. So we would go from these 9 buildings to these 6 buildings. So one might ask, why there? Why put buildings there? This map is from our transportation software, and it shows us where our students live across our district. So this is our plan moving forward, because we're trying to honor the neighborhood school concept in the most cost-effective way we can do so. So we try to put schools as close as we could to where our students live. Also, that would help save some transportation costs, but we want to get them as close as possible to their schools. You might ask logically, there's a large group of students in the middle of that map that don't have a school near them. That's correct. The school did an exhaustive and extensive search for property in that close to the downtown area, and there simply was not property available that would meet our needs for building. That's why there's not a location there. And that search went on for years, but there's just nothing available in those areas. Which again is why we feel like this is our best plan moving forward to serve kids as close as possible to their neighborhoods. So I'm going to kind of walk through the different school sites and show you what those buildings could look like conceptually and how they would fit on those school sites. So this first one we're looking at is the West Elementary. This property, if you're not familiar, is pretty close to Concord. If you were to look to the northwest on that map, Concord Elementary is just there off the screen. So the district purchased this property a few years ago. It is, I think it's on here, 20-something acres. Between 19 and 20 acres. A perfect plot of land for us to build our school. You'll notice on all of these site plans, we get the bus loop traffic off of the street. We get parking traffic off of the street or off of the road. We have plenty of parking spots, and those are important considerations for safety as well. Currently, if you look at a lot of our elementary buildings, our students are dropped off on the curb, so they're near traffic. We try as much as possible to get students and parents and traffic off of those side streets onto our property, where we can deliver them to the front door much safer. And that's a common thread you'll see through all of these. This next site is the current Cookson site. So this is current Cookson Elementary, and you'll notice that piece of land to the north of the two ball fields on it. That is currently a city park, and we are working with the city to transfer this property to us for construction, and we would exchange property of our old buildings back to the city for future use. So this is a nice site, a nice plot of land to build a new school. This is again current Cookson Elementary. And if we're successful in November, this is what that future site would be. As you're looking at these, I hope you can see from your seats that there's a red dotted line where the building was. I'll show you. So during construction, the new buildings would be built while students are attending the old building. When the new building is finished being constructed, students would move into the new building, and then we would abate and demolish the old building and finish the site plan. Again, you'll see getting bus traffic and parent drop-off traffic off of those side streets. We're going to switch over to the Hook Elementary site now. There is current Hook, and again, kind of the same thing with Concord. There's a city park to the north, part of that same deal with the city. So the future Hook site would look something like this. You'll notice a very similar building configuration. Let me speak to that real quick. So essentially what we're looking at with the buildings, and those are very rough, just placeholders. They would be two-story buildings. The part that is to the west would be essentially a two-story classroom wing with classrooms upstairs and down. And then that is separated by with space behind the next part to the east, and that would generally house the gym, the cafeteria, music rooms, things that are a bit louder that have potential to disrupt classroom learning. So that's the reason you see buildings configured like that. Also, it provides natural light for our classrooms, which we know is important for everyone. But that's the general concept for these different school plans, and they all look very similar. In fact, our three elementary buildings would be extraordinarily similar, if not identical, in terms of the blueprint. Could look different from the curve depending on some design issues, but the blueprint itself would be virtually similar or identical. Now we're looking at the Swales Road site. This is the southern site for the middle school. Peters Road is to the west. 25A is to the east here. This is south of Peters. This is 32 acres approximately. Again, the district purchased this land a few years ago in order to secure a site for our future building plans. Again, similar plan, getting traffic off of the road. Also using as much green space as possible on all of our sites for ball fields, probably even room here for a soccer field or a practice football field or something like that. And again, this would be the 5-6 building. People often ask, what about traffic when we're looking at these different locations? Part of the process moving forward, if we are successful with the bond issue, part of the process of design and building would be a traffic study. So we would work with county engineers to figure out what traffic improvements should be made for all those different buildings. So let's talk budget. Here is an overall budget for the project. You'll notice the bottom right, the total cost of the entire project, $154 million approximately. You'll notice the bottom there is kind of broken down between a state share and a local share. So the state share is just under $46 million, and that is secured funding from the state of Ohio. We have an agreement with the Ohio Facility Construction Commission. That is the organization in Ohio that is responsible for building public buildings, including schools. And we have an agreement with them. They have approved our plan, and if we are successful, that $45.6 million will be used here in Troy from the OFCC to build these new buildings, which leaves the local share that you see there in the middle column. You'll see the general cost breakdown for each of the buildings there. Abatement and demolition costs are included in this project. And you'll notice the high school HVAC project, price tag of $20.5 million approximately. Now you'll notice there's not a state share for the high school HVAC project. According to state guidelines and OFCC rules, they can't partner with us for a project in this high school unless it's a complete renovation or a new build. So that will have to be a local share. And that was a lot of discussion at the board level about that. And the board felt like we had heard clearly from the community over the last several years that this needed to be a part of this project moving forward. When that gets completed, we know that Troy High School will have to last us for the next 30, 40, 50, beyond years. So it's important to take care of the high school now because it's going to have to last us for another half century or so. If we are unsuccessful, it's our turn right now for the state funding. So we have essentially this year to try to pass the bond issue here locally. If we are successful, this funding is guaranteed. If we are not successful, they will move on to a different district and see who is able to pass the local issue to get their building project moving. And we would lose our place in line essentially. The OFCC has been helping districts build buildings for probably the last 20 or so years, is that right? About 20 years. It's taken a while for Troy to find their turn, but that's now. One of the important questions that we get, which I completely understand, is why not just renovate the buildings? Wouldn't that be cheaper? Surprisingly, no. So this information is directly from the Ohio Facility Construction Commission. They provide us assessment reports, projected budgets. They see themselves, rightfully so, as a partner in this building project, and they want to make sure that we are doing things that are cost effective here locally from their perspective as well. So the renovation costs that you see there to the left are straight from the document, and I provided a link to that document there at the bottom. And that is what it would cost us to renovate those buildings. So you'll see that total price tag there is about $112 million. Whereas the cost to build those elementary buildings that we described, including the 5-6 building, is lower. It's about $106 million. So to build new saves about $5.5 million. And that is, again, directly from the Ohio Facility Construction Commission. This presentation will be on our website. So if you want to see this information moving forward, you can go to our website and find it. I'll make sure that's a clickable link for that document. And at any point, anyone has any questions after tonight, please just reach out to us. If you see that document and want more detail or what does this mean, please just reach out through email, phone call, Facebook, whatever means necessary, and we'll get you an answer for that. If we are successful, here's a general timeline that we could expect for the project. So again, the community vote is November 7th. We would then sign a project agreement with the Ohio Facility Construction Commission in the spring of 24. Design work would commence, and that would go through the spring of 24 through the spring of 25, so about 12 months to design. During that time, site work could begin, but construction essentially begins in the summer of 2025. And of course, depending on labor markets and materials availability and weather, we would hope to finish that project in the early summer of 2027, and then move in the summer of 27, so our students could begin school in those new buildings that year. Again, once they move into those new buildings, then the abatement and demolition of the old buildings can take place and finish the site work. And that would happen in the fall of 27. So it's a lengthy process, even if we are successful here in November. So we've seen the cost. What does that mean in terms of the homeowner? So on the ballot, this is a 6.96 mil combined levy. It is one vote for all of this, but it does include a couple of different parts. 4.66 mils for 37 years covers the new construction to build the elementary buildings. 2.3 mils of that is for a couple of different things. And that lasts for 29 years. 1.8 of those 2.3 mils is for the high school HVAC project. The other half mil is a requirement from the Ohio Facility Construction Commission for collecting this money for permanent improvements. It is required by the state that when you build new buildings that you begin to collect permanent improvement money so that you can take care of those buildings. That's what that half mil is, that's a requirement. What does that boil down to? For the homeowner, it is a $20.30 per month cost per $100,000 appraised value. So if you go to the auditor website and you look at the appraised value of your home, multiply that by 20/30 for every 100,000, and that would be your monthly cost. I think it's important to point out that that monthly cost per $100,000, I know property values have increased here lately, and that gets people wondering and worrying about what might happen down the road. That $20.30 would be locked in that first year, and that would not increase per $100,000 into the future. So as new homes are built, as property values continue to go up, the district won't collect additional tax because that bond, that rate is locked in when we buy the bonds and start this project. So that cost per $100,000 will only fall over time unless something ridiculous happened, which would be unprecedented. But that's important, I think, to understand. I have this slide because I'm often asked, how do our local taxes currently compare? Which is a great question. And so what we've done here is, these are all of the schools that are in Miami County and in our athletic league, so schools that we are familiar with. And there's a couple of things, let me explain what's up here on the screen. So the first column beside their name is their current total property tax millage. So this is what all of those districts collect in terms of property tax. The next column is essentially how much some districts collect through income tax. Not all districts have an income tax, and those that do can have two different kinds. They can have an earned income tax, which is only for people who are actively working, not those who are retired on Social Security. Or you can have an income tax on all people, including Social Security, retirees, and all those things. Troy, by the way, has an earned income tax only. So again, some have earned, some have none, some have all. So to get an accurate comparison for each of those districts, we looked at how much those districts collect through their income tax, and then answered the question, how many property tax mills would it take to get that? So we can combine those two numbers to get a combined effective tax millage rate. So after that calculation and conversion, you can see we can now compare districts to each other fairly to see what the tax burden is for all those districts. And you'll see that Troy is currently, and this is all current data from the most recent collections, Troy is currently third from the bottom. So that was a lot of information, and I'm happy to go back to some previous slides if there are questions, and I'm also happy to take questions from those of you who are here, and if we are able. Okay. We're able to take questions that are sent in online if there are any. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll be happy to answer it. Yes, ma'am. We'll bring a microphone. This way the folks at home can hear your question too.
The neighborhood schools like Haywood and Kyle, where are you going to be moving them? Are they going to go to Hook? Are they going to Concord? Where will you be putting those students?
So after the new buildings are built, before they're built actually, as we get closer to that date, we would have to create a committee of parents and work on a redistricting plan. So we would have to then work with people to make those decisions and decide who's going to go to which elementary building. We can kind of get a general idea if we look at the map and think about the building locations. But some decisions will have to be made at the street level, where is the dividing line. So the plan would be to work with parent groups from each of the buildings. It will take some time to develop that plan, but to make sure that each building has the same resources, has the same opportunities, doesn't travel ridiculous across the district to get to their building. That'd be a process we have to go through. Good question. Other questions? We have some other folks from our school who've been involved in this project and this planning for quite some time. I don't know if any of them want to say anything. If you do, you're welcome to. We have Mrs. Borchers, our board president. We have Doug Trossel from our board. Mr. Price-Becker, our school treasurer. Dr. Moore, our assistant superintendent. Mr. Dolan, our HR manager. Anything to add? Did I miss anything? There is a group that has quite a bit of information out there. They're Citizens for Troy Schools, so feel free to visit their site or speak with them if you have additional questions as well. I'm allowed to answer factual questions about the levy. I'm not allowed to advocate for it, so that's why tonight is all just the facts. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that one building was going to be reused. Why are they not selling off the other buildings to support the project?
That was entertained for quite some time, and quite frankly, we never found a buyer who was interested. There were I was on a couple of tours with people that wanted to come look at the buildings, but nothing ever panned out.
What's the fact that some of that land actually being transferred to the city?
Yes. Mr. Trossel pointed out that as well, part of that property swap with the city to get that parkland is to give them some of the land that we have where our current buildings sit. So that's part of that trade. And the city, I have to say, has been wonderful to work with. They've been very cooperative and very understanding. So we're very thankful for that. Yes, sir. We'll get you a microphone.
How much does the budget account for inflation? So if we're building in 25 to 27, we accounted for that. What happens if cost for materials and labor increases over that time?
Well, we hope for a period of not so much volatility. Certainly the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of volatility in cost increases and labor price increases. So our plan, you'll notice there was a difference in the OFCC projected costs on that one screen that I showed you with rebuild cost versus the building cost. And then on the next slide was the overall budget for the project. Those numbers were different, and the reason that they are different is whenever a building works with a designer, an architect, architectural firm, a construction company, You're right, we're trying to plan for a budget for building buildings that will happen 3 years from now, which is difficult. So you work in some allowances for that. So we have worked with our architect, we have worked with construction firms to get information and have them help us project, and we have built some protections into our budget to allow for that. Now, again, less volatility certainly helps us meet that budget. So if things were to get volatile, we may have to make some design decisions. You know, floors that would last a lifetime versus vinyl floors that would cost less. So things like that are planned for in the budget to the best of our ability, without trying to go over too much to raise the cost. Great question. Any questions from online? And feel free to ask multiple questions. You're allowed more than one. Yeah, go ahead.
What happens to the money if
Not very well. Plus, we want the viewers to hear.
If the levy fails, what happens to the land that you've purchased?
The plan moving forward right now, at least, this is a board level decision, so I don't want to speak too much for the board over there, but that would be their decision to keep moving forward to try to pass the same bond issue, or if that were unsuccessful, to reconsider. So, but I think right now, working with people here locally that understand the market, we felt fortunate to find those properties. They were not easy to find. There were not very many available, and honestly wondered if we'd find things to meet our need. So I think that right now we're very happy with the properties we found and know that they'll meet our needs, but you're right, it's contingent upon us passing a bond issue to be able to use them. Other questions? Does anybody else want to add anything? Well, as I said, if you walk away from here tonight and something comes up and you think you should have asked that, please. That's why this information is up here. Please reach out to us. My email is up there. Our phone number is out there. We want to make sure people have answers to their questions so that they can make an informed decision. Again, we will also share this presentation on our website. So anyone who is watching or anybody who sees this, you are welcome to please call and ask questions if you have them. Other than that, if there are no questions, I very much appreciate you coming out tonight and learning more about this and asking the few questions we did. So thank you very much, and if we can help you in any way, just let us know. Have a good night.